Yeah. Other than the movie theater, I thought so.
So, welcome everybody. My name is John Russell from Cortex VFA Cinemas, and we're going to play something for you here to wake everybody up. So, Tom, go ahead.
My kind.
So, for those of you that recognize that, that's a almost 30-year-old NXS tongue that's been remastered into Dolby Atmos. So, why we're here today. So I just want to go over a little bit about who we are, what we do, why we do it, and how different companies, designers, dealers can partner with Cortex. So Cortex was started by myself and my partner, Steve Evanetsky, and essentially what we do is we make a tailored set of electronics based on Dolby's commercial cinema hardware for high-end luxury home cinemas. And this is a little bit different approach than what most companies, electronics manufacturers do. So a little bit about Dolby. Everybody knows Dolby's name, but not a lot of people understand how in depth Dolby is in the marketplace and how much they have to do with content creation and how their technology is used throughout the industry as the standard. And Dolby Atmos is something that's a little bit special now because for the first time they have a piece of content that can be created once and played back on every single platform. The quality is very consistent, and it's very largely based on what the quality of the equipment you have to play it back. You will see Atmos on headphones, you'll see Atmos on sound bars, you'll see Atmos on televisions, all the way up to nice AV processors, and then you'll also see it on very high-end separates and AV processors. And the quality of the experience that you get is largely dependent on the hardware because the content is very consistent. Our products are all based on Dolby's CPA50C, which is the Cortex version of the cinema processor that is used in every commercial movie cinema in the world that plays back Atmos. And we are allowed to do things with the processing power of the CPA50C that normal consumer products don't have the capability of doing. So you will find Atmos on pretty much every kind of content. It'll be on movies, video games, streaming, and the hardware, like I said, is very much the determining factor as to what your experience is going to be. We have people a lot of times will talk about channels when it comes to AV processors, and the channels are actually less important than the amount of objects that you can create. As you were listening to the NXS track, you hear things moving around you, and everything isn't at the edge of the room. There's things in the three-dimensional space in the middle. So that's the goal that we're trying to accomplish. So this is a little bit of a difference between a consumer system and a professional system. So in a consumer world, you have your screen channels of left, center, right, and you have an LFE, and then you have your side speakers and rear speakers, and then the ceiling Atmos speakers. And this is a basic configuration. It's kind of a generic configuration that most systems will fit in. In the cinema world, it's done a little bit different. So for every side speaker, we have a ceiling speaker, and they're spaced evenly around the room. So we're using a lot more speakers, but it allows us to have motion move. When you hear the voices move around with NXS, the tonal quality doesn't change. Everything kind of stays the same, and that's part of the calibration and just part of the layout. You don't have these large gaps in the space of the room. So with Cortex, this is our specialty. This is basically what we do. We specialize in high-end luxury home cinemas. Very much like you have a doctor who's a general practitioner, but when he's got a specialist that he has to hire, the dealer network hires us as their specialist to work on the theater. It takes a lot of stress off of the dealers, and it lets them concentrate on the rest of the things that they're doing for their clients' homes. And we're there to assist in not just selling products. We're trying to be more of a partner with the dealers. So we're there to help in sales, we're helping in design meetings, we're helping in demonstrations and facilities like this and other facilities. Every system that we do, after consulting with everybody involved, we custom make. So it's not a one-off system. It is a custom-made system that's designed for the room that it's going to be in. We are there to assist the dealers in any way that they can. I've been doing this for 33 years now, and there's pretty much nothing in the custom install industry that I haven't done at one point or another. So we want to be an asset to our partners, whether it's the designer partners or whether it's dealer partners. We try and be as involved as the dealer needs us to be to make sure that the project gets completed correctly. And part of our service is 24/7 monitoring. So once we get a system up and going, we know that it's working all the time. If there's ever an issue with it, we get feedback from the system saying there's a problem, and we can address it either remotely or with our dealers. So it's very much a concierge type service for the dealers. So timing. Unfortunately, we get pulled in late a lot of times, and we have a tendency to, we can still do that, but it's actually better the earlier we are in the project, the more problems we can prevent. And preventing problems is always cheaper than fixing problems. The rooms we deal with, this is a very good sized room. We don't need a room this large. We can do very small listening rooms. That room there is basically set up for one person to listen to. So the size is not really an issue for us. It's really just the quality of the experience and how many people you need to get in the room. And the other, just kind of breaking out the parts, we're essentially making the engine for your system. So we are not designing the whole room. We're not doing the room acoustics. We're not doing the interior design. We have assets that we can recommend for doing the acoustical treatments and designing the room. We're essentially building the engine. So we're building the electronics that are running the room. If you're using a car analogy, we're building the engine and the transmission, but somebody has to build the car around it. We need the wheels and the doors and the seats and all the other components that go around it. So included in our system is, like I said, it's a little bit more than just a normal electronics manufacturer. So what we do is we take everything from the power coming in and the power quality. Power is the food that electronics eat. And if you give it bad food, it's not going to perform right. So the power coming into the system is extremely important for reliability, and it's also extremely important for the audio-video performance. So we start from that point, and we go all the way up to and including amplifiers or DACs. And then the dealers deal with the labor, they deal with the speakers, the sources, the control systems, the display, and on-site tech support. And then we come in at the very end when everything's finished and decorated and completed, and we come in and do a final calibration so that we know that everything's working properly and the experience is as it's intended. So some of the things that are different, the way that the CP850C renders a room is different than how consumer products render a room, and that's how we can get this very theatrical commercial cinema experience and a much more refined level in the home. We also have a very modular system. Way too often products become obsolete way too soon. People invest a lot of money in this stuff, and then the HDMI port on their product becomes obsolete and they have to replace an entire product. Everything we do is very modular. So everything that, if there is an upgrade to a component, we're not replacing 3 things to upgrade a system. We're replacing that one little part. It's also a much greener and more efficient way to run a business because we're not recycling electronics all the time. And we also have support. One of the other things that's a little unique with us is that we're able to work anywhere in the world. So we have the ability to have field service engineers from most of our partners go out if there's an issue at somebody's property and deal with it remotely. It's very much like I said, a concierge type service. Although we concentrate on cinemas for a reason I'll explain in a little bit, we can do any kind of an environment. So we can do game rooms, media rooms, living rooms, and that's not restricted to just homes either. We have the ability to do yachts and airplanes. So pretty much any kind of an entertainment scenario, we have a way to address. The room is a very important part of what we're doing. The room has an effect, and basically when you walk into a room, you're setting people's expectations, just like any kind of a design element. And then when you turn the lights off and you start playing the content, the room kind of has to go away, and you want to be transported to whatever environment the director and the content producers wanted you to go to. So that's why we say that cinemas kind of have to be every environment that's ever been experienced or imagined, because you need to be transported into whatever scenario that is on the screen. And so it's kind of a dual purpose. We want the rooms to look attractive when there's nothing playing, but we also want them to kind of disappear into, so the client can disappear into the environment. Which brings us to a little bit of a philosophy of how we do things. It's a term that I call experiential luxury. There's two types of luxury purchases. There are purchases that people make where you have to have some sort of a skill set to actually get the advantage of it. If you buy a performance car and don't know how to drive, you're not really getting the full advantage of what that car can do. A lot of people still buy it because it's a status symbol and they're fun to drive, but to really get the most out of it, you really have to get the work in to actually do learning how to drive. We're on the AV side, we're much more like beds and pillows. You just have to use us to experience it. And a lot of times our clients will not really understand what they purchased until after they've used it a lot and experienced it, because they're getting more out of it than they thought they would. And it's just by using it. You don't have to devote any other time to it. Cinema is also, from an entertainment standpoint, kind of turned into the kitchen of your house. People kind of congregate in kitchens, and I always thought that part of it was because the kitchen experience is different every time. It's based on the food and the other things that are happening in there. And the same thing happens in cinemas. It's a different experience based on what you're watching or what you're listening to. So we get a lot of use out of it because it's a new experience. There's a lot of things in our industry that are really cool, motorized shades, lighting controls, but they kind of become part of your background noise in your house after a while because you just kind of expect them to work. But every time you walk into a movie and you're watching a movie, it's a new experience because the movie's new. Cinemas also are kind of what created the custom install business. It was where I got my start of doing anything that wasn't just selling people a pair of speakers. It was designing cinemas. And everybody knows what a cinema is. They don't always know that they can do lighting control. They don't always know that they can do shades or distributed audio video. But every client that you talk to is going to have a frame of reference for a home cinema. They may not understand everything that we do, but they understand the concept of a home cinema. So it's a very easy way to start a sales process for people. It's also an easy way to explain everything that we do, because in this theater we have lighting control, we have temperature control, we have motorized drapes, obviously we have audio video, we have automation because we can control it, and that's essentially the core of what the custom AV industry is. And you can sit somebody in a theater and explain our entire industry sitting in one room. When I had my custom install business, that was the only demo we did. We had a theater, we sat people in the theater, and we showed them all the different options, and then we went through their house. Do you want motorized shades in your bedroom? Do you want motorized shades in this room? Do you want lighting control? And then by the time they were done, they just sat in one spot, and they've already told us how they want their house designed. So that's coming up to the end of my presentation here, but this is kind of a summary of what we hope you got out of it. We have the ultimate capabilities to recreate the Dolby Atmos experience based on the CPA 50C. We're not just a normal vendor, we're actually a partner for our partners and a resource. Steve and I have both been doing this a very long time. And we have a lot of resources in the industry. So even if it's not anything revolving around what we're doing, but if it's just an issue that somebody's having with something, we can usually help people fix things. We're also a little bit different in the fact that we're not just selling people electronics. We're actually custom building a set of electronics. We're not just selling components, and we're there to walk the dealers through to make sure that things are done correctly and that they have as few hiccups as possible. And we still believe that home cinemas are the best anchor for people's businesses. It is an easy way to explain to dealers what they want. It's an easy way for dealers to show all of their talents with all of the things that they can do. And it gives us the ability to kind of kick off the discussion for the rest of the home of what people want to do. Lastly, just wanted to acknowledge some of our partners for some of the images that we've had in here. Ziggin is the company that makes all of our HDMI matrices. Obviously Dolby, RBH, and PMC are speaker companies, and HTE and Janssen Tsai are two of our partners on the acoustical room treatment side of things. So with that being said, I'm going to introduce Tom from Dolby, and we're going to play a couple more clips for you guys to hear, and then we'll take any questions you have. So, Tom?
Great, thanks, John. Hi, everyone. Glad to have you here. My name is Tom Kodris. I'm the Director of Content Services with Dolby, and this is our Dolby 24 screening room. So what we have today, I was going to just give you a quick overview of the technology. This room has Dolby Atmos. All of the speakers are hidden behind fabric panels, but it has 24 surround speakers around the room and then overhead, so you're fully immersed in a surround field, which you probably heard on the first piece that we played there. So I have a couple of theatrical clips that we're going to play so you can get a feel for how it's applied in movies. The first clip is going to be it's a Dolby clip called Conductor, which is an animated clip which gives you a really good sense of motion and panning of the sound field. And then we're going to see a short film, which is a Dolby short, that also shows off what Atmos can do. So you're going to hear a lot of ambience and overhead effects. And ideally, you're going to feel immersed as if you're in the film itself. And then we have a short clip from the movie Gravity, which was a really good use of Atmos, where George Clooney and Sandra Bullock, they're floating in space, so there's a lot of movement and panning. So we're going to go ahead and roll that and enjoy. Go ahead, Bob.
floor's been hit. Explore. Do you read? Explore. Over. Explore. Astronaut is off structure. Dr. Stone is off structure. Dr. Stone's intact. You must detach. You don't detach that arm's going to carry you too far. Listen to my voice. You need to focus. I'm losing visual of you. In a few seconds, I won't be able to track you. You need to detach. I can't see you anymore. Do it now.
That's fine.
Houston, I've lost visual of Dr. Stone. Houston, I've lost visual of Dr. Stone. Do you copy?
Yes, I copy. I'm
Give me your
detached.
position.
I don't know. I'm spinning. I can't.
Report your position.
GPS is down. I can't. It's down. I can't.
Give me a visual.
I told you nothing. I see nothing.
You have a visual of Explorer.
No.
You have a visual of ISS.
No.
You need to focus. Anything. The sun and the earth. Give me
I
coordinates.
can't breathe.
Give me
I can't breathe.
coordinates. Dr. Stone. You're burning oxygen. You have to sip, not gulp.
So where's home, Dr. Stone?
Lake Zurich, Illinois.
Was there somebody down there looking up, thinking about you?
I had a daughter. A little girl with brown hair. Tell her that I'm not quitting.
That one always gets your heart pumping at the end there. But that's quite an immersive experience. You might have noticed in that clip how the dialogue, basically they kept the perspective of like Houston and Earth, you know, the voices when they panned around. That's something you can only do with Atmos, because now you can individually pan sound to any speaker in the room, where traditional surround sound doesn't have that same flexibility. So that's where creative filmmakers really have enjoyed what they can do now with the sound mix. So hopefully that came through there and you felt that experience. The next, I've got a couple more short clips that we're just going to play to demonstrate another Dolby clip, which gives you an idea of an immersive sound field once again with Atmos, and then we have a music clip of Imagine Dragons, the song Believer. So the second clip does not have picture, it's just a music track. So go ahead and roll that, Bob.
First things first, I'ma say all the words inside my head. I'm fired up and tired of the way that things have been.
All right, I hope everyone enjoyed that. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions? Yes.
I got one for you. So the CP850, right, which is the Dolby processor.
Yes.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on the difference in that experience versus some of the more sophisticated home processors that are out there? I'm talking about the Datasats and the Trinovs that can handle a large number of channels. If you had and I get the one-to-one relationship between the ceiling and the side speaker, but is that not something you could accomplish with one of these more sophisticated home processors?
You can, but so there's two parts of it. That there's the part of actually interpreting the metadata. So on a disk, what happens is there's 8 channels on the disk, 7.1, and those are embedded on the disk as the bed layer for the audio. And then there's metadata there that is what creates the 7.1.4 or the 6. On the consumer products that are out there, even the ones that have additional channels, they're basically just moving the same content around those channels. And the way that the CP850C renders the room is more the way that they do in a cinema. So it's designed to have more channels. The EQing is designed for bigger channels. We can actually EQ 70 different instances all at the same time going around the room. So the tonal quality moving around the room, every time you move a position of a speaker in a room, you're moving its tonal quality. We need to get it back so that they all sound the same, because a speaker in a corner and a speaker in the middle of the room is going to do different things. So we have very sophisticated EQs, and the way that we're processing the data is much more the way that cinemas do it. The advantage of that in a cinema is we can get a large group of people in a big. We don't just have to calibrate to one sweet spot. We actually can get the whole cinema to sound good. On the consumer side, we get the advantage, even though the rooms are smaller, we can really get the room to perform equally well everywhere. So it's a little bit, we're using the same tools, but in a small room, we're using them a little bit differently to get the end result that we want.
So just to simplify that, then the end result ends up being better tonal balance throughout the room because of the equalization on all the speakers, and then you get a more seamless
Yes.
bubble.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just also this room, you're hearing a CP850 in this room with all the demos today, and it's basically doing that more in-depth cinema rendering. So what you heard today is that experience.
Do you recommend speakers?
Yes, we do. It's very much dependent on what the dealer is using, what the space we have is, and what the end result of the client is. On the commercial side, it's a little bit different, because on the commercial side, they're very consistent. There's lots of brands that service the cinema world, but they're very consistent in their sound quality and how they do, because they need to be very efficient, because they need to do a big area. On the residential side, it's a little more personalized. So if a brand of speakers is something that a dealer really likes to work with, or a client has a particular brand of speakers that they like the sound of, we'll work with that to make it work in the room. There are some minimum performances that we need to do to get the result that we want, but most good speaker manufacturers are able to do that. It's just some speakers we need to put more in because their dispersion is different than other speakers, and it again depends on the room. And then subwoofers is a big thing, because getting the bass management in the system is different. This is another thing that's slightly different between the consumer products and the pro products. Is on most consumer products, when you engage a crossover, you're actually mixing the low frequency from the other channels into the LFE, and we never do that. LFE is a screen channel. It's like your center channel and your left and your right. It's not the subwoofer for the room. It's a specific channel that's encoded. It's the 0.1 channel in the disc, and it's not intended to be the subwoofer. So we have the LFE behind the screen, and then we add the subwoofers, which allow us to balance the room out and get rid of the nulls and give everybody a nice even experience. So, and again, it's another part of the toolbox that we get with the CP850C.
How many commercial installations do you have?
We don't actually do any commercial installs. We only do private home cinemas. There's over 4,000 Dolby Atmos commercial movie cinemas, but that's not our focus. We're concentrating just on the luxury market, and yachts and planes and things like that. But you're seeing an enormous amount of Atmos content, Atmos music content. That's why we concentrate a lot on music. One, it's an easy place to do a demo, but Atmos is really prevailing. It's on all the streaming services. It's the broadcast standard. So you can get this content in multiple different ways, unlike other surround and immersive formats that are really regulated to a disc format. Dolby is available through broadcast. The Super Bowl is going to be in Atmos. The video games in Atmos, all of those are, because Dolby has kind of standardized how we're going to deliver this, and they've given engineers and content creators this great toolbox to do whatever they want with. And a lot of the older musicians are going back and redoing their catalogs in Atmos because they have all the original tracks. They're all good recordings, but now they have this, they don't have just a stereo stage to deal with anymore. Now they can do this full immersive thing. One of the first music tracks I heard was Elton John's Goodbye Yellow Brick Road at Capitol Studios when they did it in Atmos. And it's a 45-year-old recording. In excess.
They just released the Beatles Abbey Road.
The Beatles Abbey Road is another one. It was the 50th anniversary that's immersive. There's, I think you might, I don't know if you know, I think there's something like 10,000 audio tracks that are going to be out in the next few months that are done in Atmos. So it's very much changing how artists are creating their content.
How does DTS-X fit into all of this?
They have a very similar process, but they're not as immersed in the content. So they're basically regulated to a few movie studios that are creating their content, but they don't have the submersion of or the ability to transmit their content the way that we can with Atmos. It's just a different way to do the same thing. Same thing with Auro 3D, which is another version that's out there. But Atmos has pretty much been the standard. The tools that you need to create Atmos content are in almost every recording studio. That's a lot of what Tom does is teaches engineers on how to actually use the tools. But Atmos is pretty much native to most recording studios now.
Yeah, and hundreds of movie titles that have already been mixed and released in Atmos.
Would you mind repeating how you said that there's a lot of new music coming out?
Yes.
This year, what was the number of titles
I
that
think
you quoted?
Isn't it like 10,000 songs coming out soon?
Yeah, I'm not sure on that, but
There's a lot of
yeah.
content,
I don't know
and
the exact
studios are redoing it. There's a lot of recording studios that are converting to Atmos to be able to mix the content.
And these titles are just being released by the music labels
Yep.
themselves? No?
What's the relationship between Cortex and RAYVA?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna just say.
So RAYVA is going to be up here in a minute, but so we have so RAYVA's approach to the cinemas is they create the interior. So they do the acoustics and they do the room treatments and the cosmetics of the room. We have kind of pre-packaged rooms based on their size because the size of the room determines what we need to put in it. So everything we do starts with the room. When dealers or consumers say, well, we want a 7.1.6 room, it's like we don't use that terminology in our world. We just say, give me what the room is, and we'll tell you what you need to do in the room to get the performance that we want. So we have a couple of package systems to make it easy for dealers with RAYVA that are including all of our products and services, and then also the Pro Audio Technology speakers and RAYVA's interior. And it gives a dealer a more efficient way to get a quote to somebody, because as long as we're in that same size restrictions that they have, we can have a pretty good idea, and then we kind of customize it after that. And we do that with multiple companies that do interiors. HDE is another one that we've done it with. And then for a lot of the systems where people want something ultimate custom, that they're working with an interior designer or they're working with an acoustician that's actually building the room and isolating it. Every room is a little bit different. So
What kind of questions do you get from dealers about the business side of it?
The biggest part of from the dealer standpoint is they get a little bit nervous to begin with because we're taking over a lot of the project, and they need to feel comfortable that we're able to do that, and that's kind of the biggest challenge, is getting them to realize that subcontracting parts of their projects out is actually a smart business decision, because if you have, there's 8 different companies involved in our portion of the product. If there's a problem with that, you've got to deal with 8 different companies to deal with to try and narrow the problem down. Where with the dealers now, they just have to deal with us because we built the whole thing. Even though it's parts from different manufacturers, we're taking the responsibility for that whole amount. And the dealers are also a little bit nervous that they're not seen by the consumer as not understanding or being the expert on it. We don't want to replace the dealer's relationship. We want the dealers to be the front person for the project. We're just there to assist them in getting the project finished and knowing what the end result is. This is all we do, and we're really good at it. A lot of it's because of repetition. And the really, really, really good dealers are probably only going to do 10 to 12 of these rooms a year. And I tell them it's like trying to be good at golf and only playing 10 times a year. You're not going to get good at it. You just don't do it enough. So we're much more efficient in how we do it. We know the tools better, and we know what the end result is supposed to be. So we know when we've got it right. And that's, communicating that to the dealers can be a little bit tough at times. But especially after they've seen a project that we've completed with them, a lot of times they don't really understand it until we're done, and then they go, okay, that makes sense. That was a much more efficient way to do this.
Isn't this, in a theater project, an area where dealers can build in margin, designing, and then how does that work into their business model?
Yeah, so because we custom make everything, we don't have any retail pricing because every system we do is different. So we encourage the dealers to take the cost of our product and the cost of all the other things that they have to add and make it a profitable experience for them. There's less labor involved from their standpoint because we essentially build the racks and build everything and ship it to the job site. But there's still a lot of work that the dealers need to do. They still need to do the programming of the control systems. They still need to, we don't do the calibrations of the video, so they still need to have somebody do that. They still need to have, the service. They need to coordinate the project. There's a lot of work for dealers to do. We're not by any means making this something that they're detached from. We just want to make it efficient for them to do so that they can be profitable by kind of having an understanding of how much work they actually have to do.
You mentioned the ongoing 24/7 monitoring. Is there a monitoring fee?
No.
No fee?
No.
Okay. What's the typical turnaround time from the time you get a empty room, let's just say, and by the time you turn around a design, first of all, and then by the time you turn around an install?
If I'm not on a plane, we usually do the designs within 24 hours, and we can get a quote to a dealer quick. The turnaround time for the projects, the new construction projects, we've got designs that we've done where the house isn't going to be done for 2 years yet because they're still digging the hole. We also have a lot of dealers who are upgrading existing projects where they've got a system already and they're ready to upgrade, go to a 4K projector, add Atmos, and so those are much faster for us to turn around. One of the advantages of working with companies like Dolby and some of the other larger commercial-oriented products that we work with is we never have a problem getting product. We never have a problem getting product fast. So, we could literally turn a system around within a week and have it shipped out, regardless of the size.
And then just picking up on Rebecca's question, then the way you do encourage the dealers to do a markup, so that means you're contracting with the dealer, not with the client.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't sell directly to consumers. We try and do some marketing to consumers, but we always bring in, and the same thing with designers, we always bring in a dealer that is capable of servicing, and you know, rarely are we doing just a theater. Normally there's, you know, the dealer is doing other things in the house, lighting, shade control, and things like that, and that, you know, we specialize in the theater part, but we need the dealers who are capable of doing everything that that client wants.
When you get consumer inquiries, do you have a facility to refer to local dealers in specific?
Depends on where it is. We're building a facility in Van Nuys. A lot of our work is in Southern California. Dolby is kind enough to let us use these facilities occasionally, so we can bring people in here. We have another event like this in London in December, first week of December, where we're doing the same thing with our UK distributor, bringing in dealers and designers and doing the same kind of presentation. There's also, we've taken dealers to Capitol Records in LA, where they have, that was the first mixing room where they did Atmos, and we can bring clients in there and listen to that system. We can bring people to Dolby's Burbank mixing room. So we have some facilities. Most of our clients are not really interested in having dealers traipse people through their homes. They're usually a little more conservative when it comes to how people are coming in and out of things, so they're not always the best example. Our showroom in Van Nuys is going to be the biggest advantage for us, because we'll be able to bring, it's actually a facility that we're sharing with Ziggin, so people will be able to see. HDMI is a huge sticking point with a lot of dealers, and a lot of the questions we get about how systems work is, you know, how are you dealing with the HDMI? Because that seems to be a sticking point for a lot of dealers. Our probably, other than Dolby, our closest partner that we work with is a company called Ziggin, and they actually make their own HDMI products. They have their own IP. They custom make things for us that allow us to work with the CP850C and play the content back, because you can't just plug in consumer content to the CP850C and always get the sound that you want. So we have some technology in our HDMI matrix that makes it so that the client will always hear sound. They'll always hear it in Atmos. It'll get upmixed if it's not native. And then, so our facility in Van Nuys will be an education center where we can show people how we're building all the HDMI stuff, and we'll be able to do demonstrations. We've got a living room area where we're doing a 5.1 system, and then we've got a theater where we're doing a 24-channel system similar to this.
Which products and what you offer are Cortex branded, and which are like Ziggin, third-party companies?
So the HDMI things are Ziggin's. The Dolby products are Dolby's. The power products are ours. They are things that I've developed over the years that are manufactured for us by a variety of companies. One of the features we have is we have a lightning detector on the system. So if lightning comes within 3 miles of one of our systems, we shut off the power grid and go to our UPS so the lightning goes away. We have some other power technology built into things. So the engineering services and the installation services and the monitoring and the power are kind of the Cortex branded parts of it. We're partnering obviously with Dolby on the processor and the Dolby amplifiers. There's some cool technology there. The processor and amplifiers actually talk to each other. So you can, if you happen to blow a tweeter or there's some issue with a speaker, the processor will notice that speaker isn't working correctly because the amp will tell it, and the processor will re-render the room without that channel. And then it'll send us a note saying there's an issue with this speaker, and we can send a technician out to take a look at it. But the people listening in the room will probably never know what happened because it happens virtually instantly.
How many of these could you build in a year?
I'd like to find out. We could do a lot. I mean, we've been very fortunate. Dolby has been a great partner with us, and although we haven't needed it yet, we have the capabilities of having their field service techs and calibrators go out and calibrate rooms for us if we get to the point where we're too busy, and we have an infrastructure set up to be able to do that. in the future. It's one of the things Tom does in all of his free time. And so we've built this to scale. You know, the company is basically Steve and myself, but we have manufacturer reps in the US and we have distributors around the world that are really our sales force for us. So we really don't have to be involved in every aspect of every project until it's really time for us. So it lets us be a lot more efficient in how we do things. We're obviously involved to the extent that the dealer needs us to. But every dealer has different requirements. Some of the dealers, they get it. They really don't need us around. They know how to sell it. They know how to explain it. They know how to install it. They just need us to provide it. Other dealers are really good at doing the sales, but they're a little challenged on getting the work done sometimes. So we're a good asset for them because we can help them through that. And there are other people in the industry who are really good at doing the work, but sometimes don't really have the sales skills to sell a system. So we make ourselves available to help with whatever that particular dealer's needs are.
Are you talking to buying groups?
We haven't yet. Because what we do is custom, it's a little bit harder to come up with a program for the buying groups to do that. We don't have a set price list for anybody. Every room is done individually. Don't tell them I'm drinking. See. Anything else? Great. Well, I'm going to turn it over to RAYVA here. So let me get there.
Does anybody need a bio break or stand up, move your legs?
What was that?
I just asked if anybody needs a bio break before we move on to the next section.
No.
All right.
All set?
Yep, you're good.
Thanks, John.
Have fun.
Well, good morning, everybody. My name is George Walter, and I'm the president of RAYVA. I look out, and there's a lot of familiar faces out there. Morning, everybody. For those of you who know a little bit about RAYVA, a little bit of this will be a review, but a little bit of it will be new. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the new initiatives that we've got going on, as well as kind of a little peek into the future of where we're going and kind of what our vision is. For those of you who don't know RAYVA, this will be an opportunity for me to give you a little background, talk about why RAYVA was formed, what we're doing right now, what we've accomplished, as well as the second part, where we're going and how that's going to happen. So first of all, you know, RAYVA, officially we're just over 3 years old. We launched at CEDIA 3 years ago and had our formal launch at the International Builder Show in 2017. And RAYVA is the brainchild of Theo Kelamarakis, and Theo is kind of widely considered the godfather of home theater. It's probably the stories go back about 35 years when Theo built the very first kind of recognized home theater in Brooklyn. And it was in a basement of a condo, and he got access to one of the first video projectors. And what drove him is, as a little boy, when he first came to the U.S., he loved to go to some of the most famous theaters in New York. And he was enamored by the theatrical aspect of it, and he still is. For any of you who have had a chance to spend time with Theo, he's an incredibly passionate guy, and he just loves movies, and he loves everything about them, but it's all about the experience. And for 30 years, he built some of the most exotic theaters anybody's ever seen. He's got 2 coffee table books full of these. He's worked with diplomats, celebrities, you name it. I mean, it's a who's who list. But every theater that he ever built was super high-end and very detailed. And through all those years, he realized the pain and suffering that the customer as well as the integrator went through to build those theaters. So the vision for RAYVA was to take home theater to a whole different level, to simplify it, to give a great experience to the customer, but also make it a really great experience for the integrator, so that it would be easy to install, and easy and predictable to get really good results. And that really is how RAYVA was formed. The team, Vin Bruno down front here is our CEO. Vin spent many years with Crestron. He's been in the industry over 25 years. He most recently was the CEO of Cedia before joining RAYVA. So he's got a ton of connections in the industry, understands what we're doing and how we're doing it. Theo Kalamarakis, I've already described. Myself, I've been in the industry for about 20 years, mostly on the display side, in new business development with companies like Digital Projection, Christie Digital, Barco. And then our Chief Operating Officer, Abe, is an ex-IBM guy. Specialty is in IT, operations, and really the backside of the business. And those are our core executives. So about RAYVA, you know, this is the words from our chairman, and our mission is to delight and inspire people by transforming the home entertainment experience through immersive theaters and relaxation spaces. His vision was to create a place where families could come together and really enjoy life. And that's kind of what we're focused on. Unlike the history of home theater where it was more about the electronics, we're really about the room. And our vision is, you know, when a designer or an architect thinks of a home, they think in terms of spaces and rooms. A kitchen is where you make food. A dining room is where you eat food. The theater is where you enjoy entertainment. It's not about the electronics. This is a kind of a visual break. This is one of our theaters in Orange County. Very customized for that client because on the right-hand side, he was in Orange County and that faced the beach and he loved the idea that he was on the ocean. And on the left-hand side, it was James Bond because his favorite movies of all time were James Bond. Very simple theater. This was installed, all the acoustic treatments and elements in less than 2 days. So again, it gives a really cool custom feeling, but it's really kind of an off-the-shelf, quick to install kind of a product. And that's what I talk a lot about, RAYVA. Historically, home theater has been a project. And I've talked and worked with literally hundreds of integrators who've done home theaters, and every single home theater they did was a one of a kind. Whether that was unique speakers, unique projector, some combination, but they never replicated that again. And our vision at RAYVA was to take that science project and convert it to a product. So it would be repeatable, predictable, so that, again, instead of selling a line item of 20 items, you sell one product, the integrated turnkey home theater. The way that we go to market is somewhat flexible. A client could come and we encourage even the integrator to sell it as a whole. But the way we present it, and I'll share that a little bit later, is we break it into building blocks. And those building blocks are the seats, the electronics, and then the room and engineering. But comprehensively, it's one single home theater. So the typical question, why RAYVA? What's unique? What's special about RAYVA? Well, again, from our background, we took collectively over 100 years of experience doing this, and we said what works and what doesn't work. A room like this is very well acoustically treated. And maybe you recognize it, maybe you didn't. But when you're standing out in the lobby and maybe you're having a chat, there's a certain amount of background noise. As soon as you walk in this room and close the door, you feel a certain sense of ease. I mean, I'm able to stand up here and present to you guys. I don't have a mic, and yet you can hear me perfectly well. And most of that's because of the acoustics. If I'm in a room this size or bigger, and I start talking and you're hearing reflections off the wall and kind of an echo, the whole essence of what I'm saying starts to become muddled and you strain. The perfect example that I talk about is a restaurant. You know, if you're having a lunch meeting and you happen to get there early and there's only a couple of you start out the conversation, it's pretty relaxed. But as the crowd comes in and the noise level gets up higher and higher, next thing you know, you're straining to hear, you're straining to speak, and the whole experience gets difficult. So about 90% of all theaters don't have acoustic treatments, and there's kind of reasons for that. everything that RAYVA does has very sophisticated engineering acoustics. So behind our kind of fancy, pretty walls are very well engineered acoustic elements, so that the room always sounds and performs really well. That complements the electronics, because no matter how much you spend on speakers, speakers can sound about twice as good if they're in a properly treated room. So you may or may not notice it, but the only thing you actually hear in this room is the noise from those lamps. And kind of jumping ahead a little bit, but taking advantage of that, everything that we do uses LED illumination, and it doesn't have those transformers, and you won't have that kind of annoying noise. So from the ground up, we said it has to be simple and easy to install. So all of our elements, all of our acoustic elements go on a wall, whether it's in pre-construction or the room's already created. It is a process that's a step-by-step, and the final stage is kind of wrapping the room, but the way rooms historically have been wrapped was custom one at a time. So a couple of guys would come on site, kind of craftsmen, and they would push and pull this material until it got just right. All of our stuff is actually in its all patented design. It collapses into relatively small containers, so it's easy for the integrator to receive on the job site, manipulate. He puts it together in a matter of a couple of hours, and then the final panels are attached via really high performance magnets. And the magnets are strong enough so that you could bump into them, push them, the elements aren't going to move. But if you grab them and pop them off, you can get access to everything behind. So if you didn't have the ability to pre-wire or to mount your speakers in wall, everything can be mounted on wall, and at the very last minute, covered up. If it's a showroom, or it happens to be an area where you want to, maybe you're not sure you want to have a theater, or you're going to move in 2 years, you can literally pop all these panels off, collapse them, ship them to the next place.
Wow.
So it's a very different approach than something like this, which is very custom for this room. The next thing is that we actually play a role in the electronics. And we have partners like Cortex, and we have partners like JBL and CAT and Origin Acoustics. We're really close partners with projector companies like Barco and Sony and Epson. So in our industry, there's typically a very big gap between the people who do the room and the acoustics and the people who provide the electronics. And we use our experience, our networking, to kind of bridge those together to make it, again, easier for the integrator. This is our origami design, which won the Mark of Excellence Award last January. This is actually a theater that we call Origami, and this installation is just about 30 miles north of here. This is our showroom in Valhalla, and these individual elements are all high-resolution images from theaters that Theo Kalamarakis has built over the last 30 years. So it really is kind of a one-of-a-kind, but it's kind of special for RAYVA. This, ironically, as a quick story, is in an office building, and maybe a few of you have had a chance to be there. But it's pretty unusual to have a theater in an office building. And I know here, you know, Dolby went to great extents to isolate this particular little screening room. But in our office room with our little six-seat theater, we were a little bit concerned that if we played a movie too loud, there's literally like a law office or real estate agent just across the hallway. So when we finished it, you know, we were in there watching movies and demoing it and kind of getting it ready for our first demonstrations. And when we got all done, we thought, gee, we better check with some of the adjacent tenants and see if we were really a pain in the butt. And we walked in and we asked the receptionist, and they said they didn't hear it. And directly behind the theater was a little company that was run by two guys, and they sell baseball cards. And they do this, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of dollars of business with baseball cards. And they're back there working, and they've got all these cards going. And we said, hey, you know, I hope we weren't an annoyance. And they said, we didn't hear anything. And they were literally 4 feet away from our theater. So that goes a long way to show the what happens when you properly treat a room from an acoustic point of view in your home. You know, you could have a theater in your basement and not be an annoyance to everybody else in the house. This is our Main Street design, something a little bit more traditional. Quickly pointing out, it gives you the look and feel of really a more exotic theater, but it uses the same core principles of panels that are mounted with high intensity magnets. And you'll notice that none of our elements go all the way to the ceiling, all the way to the floor, or the front or the back, because rooms never turn out the way they're supposed to. And so that way, if they don't actually have to touch any of the corners, you can always be assured that you can go in and install them without having to do an additional adjustment. These are just a few of our partners, and it's a continually growing list. And we're pretty excited to be participating with Cortex on this particular event. I'll mention just briefly a little bit how the RAYVA workflow operates. And we've designed ourselves so that we can work with builders, architects, integrators, but it all starts with a room. So typically they'll have a set of plans. There's an area located, could be something like a fourth bedroom, could be a media room. Maybe it's actually designated as a home theater. We look at those plans, we look at the dimensions, we feed that information into our configurator, which I'll give you a little bit of a glimpse in a minute. And the configurator goes through a very simple 3-step process. It automatically calculates, given that room size, what's the maximum number of seats you can have and what's the biggest screen size. Because we know that those are the two variables that every client really wants. They want the biggest screen and the most seats. They want to be able to enjoy this room with the rest of their family and friends. In about 15 minutes, this will give you a rough budget based upon the selection you make of pre-packaged electronics and designs. And you can toggle through and you can see what impact it has on the budget if I go to a higher performance electronics or a fancier design. So it's kind of a fun interactive tool, but it generates in about 15 minutes a budget as well as a 360-degree view of the room that you just created. And it will automatically send you via email a little PDF reminder of what that is. Kind of logs you in. Once the client said, yes, this is what we want to do, they make a deposit, then our on-staff architects will actually create custom drawings based on their actual room size. Where the door is, where there may have some obstructions, like these elements on the ceiling or this little cutout in the back corner. So then you have very specific drawings the client then signs off on. Then we go into the production phase, and at the final, when we ship, we create about a 40-page build book. And that build book is literally the theater from the ground up, every aspect of it, from the platform, seat locations, confirms sight lines, it confirms all the acoustics, key listening areas, performance of the entire room, as well as the construction, so that now the integrator just follows this recipe. It's very detailed, and the integrator's feedback is it makes the process much more efficient, much quicker. And again, our target is always, how do we get in and out in a week or less? This is our contours design, something a little bit more basic, but still having some creativity. You'll notice that we use LED track lighting, and we disguise it with our ceiling acoustic panels, but allows us to highlight the individual panels on the wall. This is the configurator that I talk about. Again, first step, it starts with room templates. You pick the template that's closest to your size, automatically populates the number of seats and the screen size. Then you choose seats. We try to give enough choices so the client can actually see a range in prices and styles and colors, but not too many choices so it's overwhelming. Then a list of AV components. There's right here is represented 4 different prepackaged versions, and then 12 different design themes that they can choose from. This is our illuminations design. This actually is just being released in the Atlanta Design Center as a showroom for one of our integrator partners. And in that design center, we will be also doing CEUs for architects and designers on the best way to maximize home entertainment for their clients. This particular design is worth noting. Theo Kalamarakis had met a fellow Greek resident, Antonia, and Antonia is a sculpturist, and she makes all of her sculptures with glass. And Theo met her at a gallery in Soho, and he started chatting with her, and he said, hey, I would love to use some of your elements in one of my theater designs, and that's how Illuminations was created. So what's new with RAYVA? We've got a brand new configurator, which we'll be announcing along with our new website next week. The unique thing about our configurator is it's more interactive, it's got more choices for seating, broader price ranges, but it also, we've got custom configurations with our alliance partners, like Cortex VIP, like Origin. So as you step through, those electronics packages are collaborations with our electronics partners. So if you are a Cortex fan and you want to do a RAYVA theater, you go directly to the Cortex configurator and it will design that theater using the Cortex elements. The other unique thing is we've now added a phone app. More and more of our integrators, because it is web-based, they enjoyed sitting with their client with a laptop, but now we have the advantage they can do it with an iPad or any kind of a phone type application. Currently we have alliance partnerships with Origin, Cat, and Cortex, but in the future we're having discussions with a variety of other manufacturers to create similar alliances, and there will be additional configurations again based on those electronics bundles. Probably the most exciting thing that we're working on now is our wellness initiative. And our wellness initiative started about 6 months ago. And as we did more and more research on the wellness idea in biophilia, it's all about bringing nature back into the workplace, bringing nature into the home environment, and the impact of bringing nature to your everyday life and how it affects your moods and how it affects the way you live. So we looked at what RAYVA does uniquely, and we said, how can we really be an impact player within this wellness arena? And quite simply, our intent is to create an outdoor simulator. And what that means is in a room like this, we can make you feel like there's components of the outdoors, even if you're in the 28th floor of a building in downtown Manhattan. And from my side, you know, in my year's experience, I did many simulators for fighter pilots, train simulator, firearm training simulation. It's a company called FATS. And as I work with these simulator companies and the actual engineers who created the software behind it, they told me that the key was to be able to create an environment that was good enough that it tricked the brain into believing that they were there. Mm-hmm. And so that's exactly what we're going to be doing with RAYVA. We'll add elements to the room, whether it's sound isolation, immersive audio by use of multi-channel speakers, video elements that will add to the room that will all be synchronized to give you the feeling that, you know, you could be on a beach, you could be in the mountains. You pick that environment. Circadian lighting. So if you want to have the impact of what the color temperature of the sun would be at that time of day, all of those elements would be included in the RAYVA Wellness Room. So it really becomes an outdoor simulator. Regardless of where the room is, you can escape the outside environment of being in Manhattan or being, you know, anywhere else. And what would you do in there? Could be that you want to just relax. Could be you want to meditate. Maybe you want to do yoga. Maybe you want to ride a Peloton bike. We can actually connect with the Peloton And whatever you would typically see on that 15-inch screen, you could see on a large screen and actually feel like you're riding that bike somewhere through the countryside. But the sum of it all is to create an environment that you feel like you're outdoors. And it will change your mind and change your attitude. The other direction is to create RAYVA rooms for more applications. Most people think of home theaters as being relatively large rooms, 10, 15 seats. We're finding that more and more people really enjoy a smaller room. Maybe it's just 4 seats where a couple and their 2 kids can really become immersed and enjoy entertainment, whether it be a movie or a documentary. And that only needs to be maybe a spare bedroom. Maybe they convert the 4th bedroom into a little 4-seat theater and change the way they enjoy it. The wellness rooms, listening rooms, anywhere where you really want the room to make a difference. And as I said before, a big component of that is the lighting and the acoustics. We have started global expansion. In March of this year, we opened RAYVA India. We're now looking to add distributors in Europe and the Far East in Australia, as well as we've started some projects in South America. The real advantage that RAYVA brings to these new geographic markets is they typically don't have access to the electronics like a lot of the US customers do. And so they leverage us much more for our networking with manufacturers and our understanding of the complete solution, not just the room and acoustics. We're also starting next month very aggressively initiating an outreach campaign with architects and designers. We're creating curriculum, again, where those two can actually participate in our seminars and get CEU credits. So as kind of a summary, what is the role that we see RAYVA playing? It's to bridge that gap between design and electronics. There's a lot of people in our industry that still feel pretty confidently that we've only touched about 10 to 15% of the potential clients that could really enjoy the technology that we all use every day. And most of that is most people, clients, designers are intimidated by the pure technology. And at RAYVA, we feel that we can bridge that gap. We can make the technology approachable. We can add the design elements that the designers and architects kind of covet and have been driven, but fold in the performance of electronics so that you can make the sound and video blend and be seamless and easy to use. And as I said before, our approach is it's about selling the room and how you enjoy the room, not about selling electronics. So that's it. That's RAYVA. We would love for you to learn more about us by visiting our brand new website that'll be up next week at rayva.com. And if you have any questions, I'd love to be here to answer them for you. Sure.
What's your timing on actually delivering solutions for the wellness rooms that you were discussing?
So a lot of it, we're in discussions with a couple of integrators that will actually do something within the next probably 3 months. To formally launch a product, we're probably 6 months away, because what we've learned is the best thing is to find a couple of kind of strategic clients, share our product vision, install it, and learn from it before we launch it as a full product.
And that'll end up eventually on the website as one of the options
absolutely.
You can choose for a room.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like you're hoping to expand your customer base. Right now, what is the least amount of money that you can get a RAYVA room for, and where would you like that to be?
So right now, a complete room with electronics, with seating, is about $55,000. And as you see our new configurator, that's where kind of the least expensive total solution will come in. And that ranges from there all the way up to probably 350,000 if it's a big room and it's using, Cortex VIP type equipment. Ideally, as we work to broaden our space, particularly in the wellness arena, where the rooms are likely to be a little bit smaller and maybe the electronics not quite as sophisticated, our target is to be more in the $20,000 range.
That'd be great.
Is the configurator designed to supplant the need for design fee?
In many ways, yes. In reality, it more complements the design fee. What we are finding, and again, to be very transparent, we launched the theater based on some feedback we got from some luxury builders. But in the year and a half that we've had the configurator in its early stages, the reality in our industry is from the time the client first says, I might be interested in a theater, there's a pretty long gestation period before they actually start making decisions. And one of the challenges that a lot of the integrators had was if they spend a lot of time with that client in the beginning, that a lot of that time and effort doesn't result in cash flow, right? So if they do a lot of custom drawings and a lot of design work, it's not really easy for them to bill it. So then you end up with design fees. But a lot of clients don't want to pay a heavy design fee when they're so far away from actually having the theater. So what the configurator does is it bridges that gap, right? It allows them inexpensively, because it only takes 15, 20 minutes, to step through the process, grab a template and say, oh, given the room size I have, I can accommodate 6 seats or I can accommodate 8 seats. They can start to visualize what that is. They can start to plan for the budget. The dealer kind of locks them in and records them via the configurator. And then 6 months later, when they're really ready to make the decision, then you actually do the design plans. So it really makes that overall process easier, where today so much of it is forced them to negotiate the design fees 6-8 months before they're actually doing the process.
How many systems do you have installed?
Right now, got about 25 systems installed worldwide, and we've got probably another 10 in the queue. Any other questions? Any other comments?
Is there a possibility of the rooms having more than one purpose? Would a home theater also be able to function as a wellness room if people have the space to accommodate multiple space?
Yeah, absolutely. And when you break down the actual difference between a wellness room and a dedicated theater, the key element is the seating, right? And one of the visions we have is kind of flexible seating that may move out of the room or move against a wall when you want to use it for yoga or some kind of meditation, and it comes in when you want to use it for a media room. Probably the most practical multifunction aspect would be adding the gaming element. Because if you look at the way gaming is typically enjoyed, it's with 1 or 2 people. A primary person that's gaming and maybe another person that's hanging out with them watching, or they're trading back and forth. So now you may have a room where you have multiple seats for enjoying a movie, no seats for wellness or meditation, and 2 seats for gaming. But the actual electronics package is transparent for all of it.
It's a good idea.
Well, if that's it, I thank you very much for participating and let me speak to you. And again, if you have any questions or any feedback that you'd like to share with us, I'd love to chat with you, and I'm sure Vin would as well. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.